I told you this would happen. I knew this would happen. I predicted that this would happen literally years ago. Check out this video. In this video, this is a grown man. Now, I'm telling you that this is a grown man, even though this should be obvious, because this grown man is disguised as a dog. Yes, that's right. This grown man identifies as a dog. He wants to be treated as a dog. He wants to live as a dog. He paid $14,000 to have a quote-unquote lifelike dog suit made. He gets inside that dog suit. He goes in public and rolls over and shakes hands and pretends to bark. And then in public, I don't even know what the right word is. He displays his fetish because he craves validation from other people. I predicted that this is exactly what would happen. I knew that this was going to be the next step of it. Take a look at this. The one that looks like a collie, that's a grown man inside that dog suit. The face of the dog, I will say, the face of this costume does look pretty realistic, but the rest of it, not so much. A grown man is in there. Now, this grown man has his own YouTube channel, and he posts videos of himself, some of which go viral. I think this video has gotten several million views. Posts pictures of himself. He says he hides this fetish from his family and his friends. They don't know that he does this. On his YouTube channel, he only reveals his first name, which is a pretty common first name. Watch this. Oh, this is my favorite part. A real dog comes up to this man faking to be a dog, and the real dog knows that it's a fake dog. If that isn't the funniest dang thing that you've ever seen, the dog is the one that knows that the man inside the dog suit is a fake. Meanwhile, the people around this dog identifying man, that woman, I think she was a news reporter, maybe doing some kind of news package or news story on this, treating this man inside the dog suit like a real dog. The humans are acting like idiots, and the dog was like, that's not a real dog. That's a man in there. What a freak. And the real dog, the little white dog that you saw, was scared and ran away, which is exactly how humans should respond to this guy. This is what I predicted, though. Several years ago, when it was just becoming culturally acceptable to propagate the transgender ideology, I think it was like 2015 was right around the time when transgenderism became a thing. Before that, nobody knew any transgender people. This wasn't something that was talked about. It was gay marriage that was at the forefront. If you were talking about LGBTQ, you possibly had heard of like transvestites or, maybe drag queens, but transgender, especially with the surgeries, was like bananas odd. No one had really heard of it. And then all of a sudden it came onto the scene in 2015. And I said at the time that if we as a society indulge this delusion, and it is a delusion, if we indulge the delusion of redefining what a woman is or redefining what a man is, then what's the limiting principle on that? If the premise of that is there's no objective reality, anyone can be anything if they identify as that, right? If a man can be a woman because he identifies as one, if a woman can be a man because she identifies as one, what could possibly be the limiting principle on that? Does that mean that a grown man who wants to identify as a kindergartner the parents of real kindergartners have to tolerate a grown man in their children's classrooms? This would be insane. I said, or are we going to get to the point where adults are trans species, where human beings are claiming that they are really animals trapped in humans' bodies, and therefore they need owners, and they need food, and they need, I guess, a $14,000 dog suit? This is actually, and I know it's ironic to use the word logical when it comes to the monstrosity that you just saw, this is the logical conclusion of the transgender ideology. This is the logical conclusion of a society that says, well, you can redefine any word to mean anything, and if you believe that you are Santa Claus, then you are Santa Claus. The logical conclusion of this is trans species, which is exactly what you saw in this video. And by the way, I know this is a very edgy take, and I think you will agree with it once you allow me to lay it out for you. The beginning of this madness that we are facing in our country, transgender, trans species, whatever, the beginning of this madness was conservatives and Republicans surrendering the fight on gay marriage. We're going to talk about that in just a second, but first I want to tell you why you need to get 4 Patriots survival food kits. The UN food chief warned the world that we are knocking on famine's door. He called what we're facing a perfect storm of a perfect storm. And he's not alone in this kind of warning. Barron's also published that a food shortage could be coming even in the United States. And farmers see it too. John Boyd Jr. is a fourth-generation farmer. He said that we are going to see empty food shelves in the coming months. That's why getting survival food is more important than ever. I strongly recommend that you do what my husband and I did, and you create your own stockpile of the best-selling 4 Patriots survival food kits. We have these in our basement right now. My husband was delighted when they showed up to our door. Very easy to just put them in the basement for storage. It's also not ordinary food. We're talking good for 25 years, super survival food. They have different breakfasts, lunches, dinners. You can make these meals in less than 20 minutes. You just add boiling water, simmer, and serve. And right now, you can get 10% off your first order at 4patriots.com if you use my promo code Liz. Go to 4patriots.com, use promo code Liz to start your stockpile today. That's 4patriots.com, promo code Liz. You'll be glad you did. So the beginning of this madness, where we see this grown man dressed up in a $14,000 dog suit, rolling over, barking for treats, pretending to do dog tricks like shaking hands, identifying as a dog, the weirdest of the weirdos that you can possibly imagine. Like, this used to be some really obscure and kinky sexual fetish, and now he wants to go on the streets of your community and wants you to pretend that he's a real dog. Like, you can't even believe that this is happening. The beginning of this was, or the reason that our culture has been conditioned to accept this, started all the way back when conservatives and Republicans surrendered the fight on gay marriage. Now, you might be sitting there thinking, really, Liz? Really? How exactly are the two things correlated? Let me tell you. So when I say when conservatives and Republicans surrendered the fight on gay marriage, I'm talking about legally. I'm actually not talking about the morality of homosexuality or the immorality of homosexuality. That's not what I'm talking about at all. What I'm talking about is the redefinition of a word that we don't have the power to redefine because it's not something that we instituted. Marriage simply is. It is a thing. It is a covenant. It is something that God ordained, whether you're religious or not. Marriage is widely acknowledged to be something that God ordained. And we as a political body decided that we simply had the right to redefine marriage. And the moment that that happened, the moment that conservatives and Republicans fell for this really a false idea of tolerance, they were told, if you don't support gay marriage, if you oppose this, then you are A, violating the separation of church and state, you are a bigot, and how could this possibly make a difference in your life? How could two men getting married possibly impact anything that has to do with you? They were throwing a very libertarian viewpoint. And Republicans and conservatives fell for this. In fact, I spoke at the Young America's Foundation's National College Conference this past weekend in Washington, D.C. It was a fabulous time as always, but I got a question about gay marriage and about not the religious part of it, but the secular argument against gay marriage. And I want to show you this question, and I want you to hear my response. Take a listen to this.
Howdy.
Hi.
I'm Reagan. I'm proudly representing Texas A&M.
So I expected that from you guys.
I'm Catholic as well, and I find it kind of difficult to defend my position on gay marriage from a secular point of view. What is your position on the legalization of gay marriage, and how do you defend that?
From a secular point of view or a religious?
From a secular point of view.
From a secular point of view? Oh, it's super easy. So from a secular point of view, this is not about homosexuality. It's not about two people of the same sex who want to live together, love each other, or make any kind of commitment to each other. It is about authoritarianism. Authoritarianism is when the government or government officials have the power to arbitrarily dictate anything to you, and that you must be required to follow that. So what happens when a society redefines the word marriage is you have a panel of judges, in this case on the Supreme Court, that arbitrarily expropriated this power to tell us that the definition of a word that they have no power to redefine means something that it does not mean. If our government officials, if our politicians have the power to redefine words, then there is no such thing as a free society. Thank you. And that, my friends, is exactly how we got to dog man. Exactly how we got to a grown man identifying as a dog is conservatives and Republicans fell for the idea, the libertarian idea, that anybody should be allowed to do anything for any reason as long as it didn't violate your inherent human right, that we should give the power to the government to redefine a word that they don't have the power to redefine, that we should obliterate objective reality in favor of indulging how someone wants to identify. And as now, then it had no limiting principle. None whatsoever. How quickly did it take us to get from gay marriage to man identifying as a dog? because without reality, we live in a society of chaos. I want to give a shout out to a student that was attending this conference at YAF named Steven. Steven said he was my biggest fan, and I really appreciate that, Steven. I appreciate you watching the show, listening to the show every day. You said that you are a daily listener, and thank you for coming up to me and saying hi. It was great to meet you. I hope to see you there next year. I have a funny story that from the speech. So I walk out on the stage, and something happened to me on the stage that has not ever happened to me before at any speaking event. And we're going to talk about that in just a second. But first, I want to talk to you about American Hartford Gold, because is it only me, or do you also feel more insecure and uncertain about your future by the day? At every turn, we're paying more, but we're getting less because we're facing record high inflation, soaring interest rates, and what seems to be a looming recession. It threatens our businesses, our jobs, and our retirement funds. Even Fed Chair Powell warned us that we should brace for more pain, which is not something that I like to hear. Fortunately, there is a way to secure your hard-earned nest egg, even in the face of this insecurity, this uncertainty. You can do what I did. You can call the only precious metals dealer I trust, American Hartford Gold. They make it simple and easy to protect your savings and retirement accounts with physical gold and silver. With one short phone call, they can have physical gold and silver delivered right to your door or inside your IRA or 401k. American Hartford Gold is the highest rated firm in the country with an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau. And if you call them right now, they'll give you up to $1,500 of free silver on your first order. So don't wait. Call them now. Call 866-781-7499. That's 866-781-7499. Or you can text Liz to 65532. Again, the phone number is 866-781-7499, or text Liz to 65532. Okay, so funny story. This was such an amazing production that YAF, the Young America's Foundation, put on. The stage and the lighting and the production was like phenomenal, the best I've ever seen. And it's really fun to be introduced on a stage when the production is this premium quality. So what happens is behind the stage, there's all the stage hands. I'm waiting in the wings. There's a couple of stairs that you walk up to for the stage. So when the student who's going to introduce me goes out onto the stage, I'm led by a stagehand to the top of the 2 or 3 steps. I'm held in the wings while, in this case, it was a student named Mary who introduced me, very kindly introduced me. And then after she finishes her introduction, she walks off while they start this dramatic countdown, like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, before they start my intro music, and then I go out onto the stage. And part of this operation is that when the student goes out onto the stage, she carries my speech with her. I don't usually write out these speeches because I want to speak directly and authentically to the students, but I do write bullet points of what I want to talk about to make sure that I stay organized and don't go off on some tangent based on crowd reaction. So she usually carries, I think I had 2 pages this time of just some bullet points of things that I wanted to say in the order in which I wanted to build my case. And she took it out to the podium for me when she was making her remarks. Now, usually I take my phone up so that I stay on time because as you guys may have noticed, sometimes I tend to be a little long-winded and I need to stay on track. I didn't take my phone up that time. I walked up to the front of the stage and realized that my speech was not on the podium. So I'm standing there, and in my mind, as I'm like greeting people, I'm like, well, that's ironic that I didn't bring my phone because I could always find the notes to my speech on the phone. And I'm thinking, okay, well, how do I handle this? Do I just ask through the microphone as I'm greeting everyone and saying hi and making my introductory comments, which I never write down anyway? Should I just ask for my speech to be brought to me, or should I just wing it? Should I just like give the speech that comes to my mind here? And I decide that that's what I'm going to do. I decide that I'm not going to ask for the speech, that this is stuff that I talk about all the time, and what comes out of my mouth will be what comes out of my mouth. So I start in on the speech thinking, well, we'll see what this is gonna be. And then we have a stagehand who honestly burst my bubble a little bit by very generously coming out and bringing me my speech, because I was interested to see what the speech would be without the bullet points and notes. But first time that's ever happened to me. Usually, like I said, I have a backup with my phone just in case, because I put effort into thinking about what I want to say beforehand, making sure I have facts and figures or an organization that makes sense. But all's well that ends well, I suppose, because ultimately I got my speech. So CNN tweeted, if we could bring this tweet up on the screen. This is, I would say, pretty nuts even for CNN here. CNN tweeted, "It's time to stock up on tissues, bingeable TV options, and COVID-19 tests. Yes, many signs are pointing to a COVID-19 summer surge. although one that's far less intense than what emerged the past few summers. Can you imagine anybody reading that tweet and actually going out and doing that? Like, can you imagine what kind of idiot is going to go out and be like, oh my goodness, I need to go get some tissues. I need some tissues in case I get COVID. I need some tests so that I can, sit there with my tissues and do nothing because there's nothing to do if you get COVID. It's just a cold. Can you imagine if someone's actually planning to get COVID this summer? First, when I saw this tweet, I laughed because I thought CNN is the absolute worst. And then I'm thinking about the fact that we're 3 years into COVID, and the man who arguably had more influence in our country in creating the cultural and economic shock that we are in because of government policies in the name of COVID has not been held accountable. And that man, of course, is Dr. Fauci. He didn't even really lose his job at NIH. All that really happened was that he's not an active employee there, but he still gets millions of dollars in security. Millions of dollars. It's actually hard to fathom that this is not the primary debate that's happening, the primary policy initiative or the primary thing that Republican presidential candidates are talking about in the primary. I think that they should talk about COVID. I think the entire Republican primary should be a referendum on everything that happened during COVID. That's what the Republicans should be debating during this primary. But unfortunately, it's not. Although President Trump did eviscerate his Republican opponents in the lead up to this debate, and we are going to watch that video in just a second. But first, I want to talk about fresh pressed olive oil. The most delicious olive oil that you'll ever taste is fresh from the farm. That's when olive oil is at its peak of flavor and nutritional goodness. Supermarket olive oils, on the other hand, can't compare to this because they sit on the shelf for months at a time, which means they grow stale, which is gross. That's why I get my olive oil direct from small, award-winning family farms, thanks to a fellow named TJ Robinson. He's also known as the olive oil hunter. TJ's farm fresh oils are vibrant and grassy, incredibly delicious on salads and bread, veggies and pasta, meat and fish, even desserts. It's making my mouth water just thinking about this feast. To let you taste the difference that freshness makes, TJ will send you a full-size bottle. It's normally $39, free if you pay just $1 to help cover shipping. That's how he introduces people to his fresh pressed olive oil club. Just $1 for shipping and the free bottle is yours. And there's no commitment to buy anything now or ever. To get your free bottle, to taste the difference that freshness makes, go to farmfresh123.com. That's farmfresh123.com. farmfresh123.com. Okay, President Trump called on the other Republican contenders for presidential nominee. He told them at a recent rally in Pennsylvania that they should all drop out. And honestly, before you watch this clip, this is what I like about Trump. I'm not saying that these other contenders should drop out. I don't think they should. I like a competitive primary. But what Trump did is like classic Trump. We're going to deconstruct why he called for them to drop out and what it does, what his rhetorical strategy does in the minds of voters. Take a look at the reason that he told Republican contenders to drop out of the primary.
I say this from strength, not from weakness, believe me. I think it's time for Ron DeSanctimonious and so many of those other clowns on the stage. No, you had to see Iowa. They're speaking to people that aren't even listening. They're talking. They're waiting for me, I have to say. They're waiting for me to come up. I spoke last, but they're waiting for me to come up. But for Ron DeSanctimonious and so many others that are wasting hundreds of millions of dollars that Republicans should be using to build a massive vote-gathering operation to take on crooked Joe Biden in November, because we cannot lose. We cannot allow our country to lose that election. If we do lose that election, I don't think we have a country anymore. I'll be honest. You see what's going on. Millions and millions of people pouring across our border, invading our country. They're invading our country.
Okay, what I mean when I say that this is classic Trump is listen very carefully to what he said. He said he thinks that his Republican primary opponents should drop out. Why? Because he says the money that they're using to campaign against him could be better spent on, he called it a vote gathering operation, but what it really is would be a ballot harvesting operation. And I don't care which phrase is used, one's not right or wrong. I just want to explain why he's calling for that, because the Democrats arguably won in 2020, at least in part, because of their ballot harvesting operations, which I disagree with. I don't think that they should do that. I don't believe in election season. I think we should just have election day. But I also don't believe that we should refuse to compete using the rules that are in place, even if we disagree with those rules. So if it's election season, you bet we should compete during election season. If ballot harvesting is legal, you bet we should take part in ballot harvesting. Are you kidding? So what President Trump is doing is putting his opponents in a funny position here. So he's saying you should drop out and use, otherwise you're wasting money that could be used for ballot harvesting. So these candidates are now in a position where they're either going to say, okay, I'll drop out, in which case that's what Trump wants, or they're going to say, no, I won't drop out. And Trump's response is going to be, well, then don't you care about ballot harvesting? And the reason that this is such a funny and smart tactic of Trump's, this is kind of a classic Trump tactic, is because the ballot harvesting is what the base wants, but the RNC, whose actual responsibility is to fund and build ballot harvesting operations to compete with the Democrats' ballot harvesting operations, is refusing to do so. So the base is mad at Ronna Romney McDaniel and the RNC for refusing to spend their millions and millions and millions of dollars on ballot harvesting. So Trump is now pitting his Republican primary opponents against a grievance of the base, a totally valid grievance of the base. When I say grievance of the base, I'm included in that base and I share that grievance. I don't think that these people are going to drop out. I do think that this is classic Trump rhetoric and pretty funny. So Joe Biden right now is terrified, absolutely terrified, not just because Hunter Biden's former business partner, Devin Archer, is set to testify in front of Congress. I mean, Joe Biden is so terrified of that he sicked his DOJ on Devin Archer. The DOJ is actively trying to arrest Devin Archer and put him in prison before Devin Archer gets a chance to testify to Congress. Don't you wonder what Joe Biden and Hunter Biden believe that Devin Archer will tell Congress that will obviously implicate the Bidens in some way, or Biden wouldn't so blatantly weaponize the DOJ to try to shut Devin Archer up. That's not the only thing that Biden is afraid of. He's also afraid of the proverbial upper middle class suburban mom voter. And the reason that I say that he's afraid of these women is because Joe Biden finally acknowledged his 7th grandchild. You'll remember Hunter Biden fathered a child with a stripper. And this little girl is 4 years old now. Her name is Navy Joan. Hunter Biden is the biggest scumbag on earth. At first, he denied paternity. A court made him take a paternity test, and of course, he is the father. So he tried to deny this girl when he knew that she was his daughter. He then went to court to try to lower child support payments, which, again, scumbag of all scumbag. You are literally shaking down foreign entities for $10 million, and you can't spare a couple of dollars to support your daughter. Like, bad person. Can't be overstated. Then Hunter Biden went to court to try to deprive Navy Joan of his name. He said he didn't want her called Navy Joan Biden. He wanted her to be forced to use her mother's maiden name as her last name. Just such an evil man. Women voters care about this issue. They care about the fact that Hunter Biden is such a scumbag. They care about the fact that he's abandoning a woman that he got pregnant. He's abandoning his daughter. People are turned off by that. It's grotesque. It hits us in the gut. It's just like one of the most evil things a man can do. And Joe Biden realizes that this is actually going to be a deciding factor in the 2024 election, because even though Hunter barely acknowledges this girl as his daughter, the White House finally released a statement, an exclusive statement, to People magazine, which is telling in and of itself, because People magazine, who's the primary demographic that reads People magazine, women in their 30s and 40s. So exclusively to People magazine, just this side, I mean, they're barely better than a tabloid magazine. Really, a White House, I mean, should a White House even be giving an exclusive comment to People magazine? I'm not even sure that they should, but this is what Joe Biden said. Our son Hunter and Navy's mother London are working together to foster a relationship that is in the best interests of their daughter, preserving her privacy as much as possible going forward. This is not a political issue. It's a family matter. Jill and I only want what is best for all of our grandchildren, including Navy. And I read this and I thought, can you even believe the pandering? Like the last sentence, all of our grandchildren, including Navy. After they ignored Navy at Christmas, the fireplace with the stockings that Jill Biden hung included their dog and not their 7th grandchild, not their granddaughter, Navy Joan. They can't acknowledge her until they believe it's going to be an electoral threat to Joe Biden. A bad, bad, bad family. Tomorrow we're going to talk more about the Department of Justice being weaponized against Devin Archer, Hunter Biden's former business partner, who must have some pretty juicy stuff to say. Pretty juicy stuff to say if Joe Biden is trying to throw him in prison in order to prevent him from speaking to Congress. All right, we have time for one random thing from the internet today. This is Republican versus Democrat game. Take a look at this.
I worked for the House of Representatives for like 5.5 years, and every morning when we would go to get coffee, we would play this game called Republican or Democrat. Not a very high-level game. Basically, we would just guess if someone was a Republican or Democratic staffer based only on their outfit. For women, I think the two biggest tells are their work bag and their shoes, so let's talk shoes. We're going to start easy and get harder. Rothy's, so Democratic. They're made out of like plastic water bottles, sustainability, eco, blah, 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 blah. I get it because these are so comfortable, but Republican. Okay, I saw some back and forth on this one, but the number one way to tell if it's a Republican, the heel height. Democrats are not wearing stilettos. Doesn't even matter what the brand is, like any heel over 3 inches, Republican. Democrats love a block heel. I don't know if they would like just hand it out at the DNC convention, but every Democrat I know has this shoe. Okay, here's where things get a little interesting. I think that any cap-toe shoe is actually bipartisan. I think it bridges the divide of like preppy, but also practical. I have this one from French Soul.
That is hilarious. That you can go on this girl says you can go on Capitol Hill and you can tell a Democrat staffer from a Republican staffer just by their footwear. I'm going back to DC next week and I'm going to look because I think she's right. I think this is actually really insightful. I think this is so interesting. That is hilarious. Absolutely hilarious. Okay, guys, don't forget to grab your copy of my new upcoming book, Hide Your Children, Exposing the Marxists Behind the Attack on America's Kids. It's coming out in, 8-9 weeks? So go to hideyourchildrenbook.com, pre-order your copy so it's in your mailbox in just a couple weeks. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. I'm Liz Wheeler. This is The Liz Wheeler Show. If you haven't already, give this video a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button below, and ring the bell to make sure you never miss a video.